You're listening to the Canned Air Podcast, your sidekick in the quest for knowledge, power, and entertainment. So strap yourselves in and prepare for victory!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Canned Air, a tribute to comics and pop culture. I am Jeremy Colley.
And I'm Jack Doherty.
And we've got a good show lined up for you today where we're going to be talking all things Playboy. But when we say that, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking we're going to be talking nudes? We're going to be talking bodies?
How can you do that on a radio show?
Not the same fact, right? But no, actually, we're not going to be talking just about nudies. We're going to be talking about just Playboy in general and its impact on society and pop culture. Because, I mean, what kind of a pop culture show would we be if we didn't address Playboy, right? Come on.
One of the biggest icons ever.
So in our Retro Roundtable, we're going to be talking about Playboy, and then later in the episode, we're going to be joined by former model and author Patty Farmer to talk about her book, Playboy Laughs, the comedy, comedians, and cartoons of Playboy, coming out August 3rd, which really shines a light on like the Playboy clubs and resorts and like the cartoons, the stuff people really don't know about Playboy, like before the magazines, you know?
Comes out today.
Oh, yeah, it comes out today. Yep. We're recording this before August 3rd. Yeah, so it's out there now, people. And I'm sure you can go to our website. We're going to have a link up you can follow to go make your purchase, or you can head over to patty-farmer.com after you hear our conversation with her. But before we do that, don't forget to be checking us out on cannedairpodcast.com. We're on Twitter at cannedairpod and on Instagram at can_air. And YouTube. We have a YouTube page that's ever growing with content. We've got a Let's Play video on there.
The Simpsons is on there now.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even seen it yet. Is it really?
Not yet. It will be by then, though.
Oh, damn it. I broke the illusion again.
It's almost done.
I broke the illusion. Sorry. Oh, I can't wait for that. But what else is on there? We've got con coverage. There's the Star Wars video, Star Wars in the Power of Costume.
Awesome video. Awesome.
Yeah, it is. I'm enjoying it. I went back and watched it after making it. When you're making it, you can't enjoy it. You have to go back and look at it as a finished piece. Like, oh, that is kind of cool. But it's about an hour-long walkthrough of the Star Wars in Power of Costume exhibit at the Cincy Museum Center. So get on there, check it out. Like, comment, subscribe, please. And for those of you who are going to the Wizard World Convention this weekend in Columbus, Ohio, August 4th, 5th, and 6th, if you have not bought your ticket yet, when you go to wizardworld.com, in the promo box there, put Canned Air, all lowercase, no space between Canned and Air, and you're going to receive a cool 10% off your ticket purchase. But it's good not only for Columbus, the following show in Chicago, August 24th, 25th, 26th, and 27th. And then after that, in Nashville, September 8th, 9th, and 10th. If you are attending this con, use promo code CANNEDAIR, lowercase, no space, and you'll get that 10%.
That 10% you save can get you something at the con.
Yeah. Something small, maybe, but every little bit helps, right? All right, well, with that behind us, let's just kick it off with this week's Retro Roundtable.
Do it! Do it! Come on! I'm here! Come on! Do it now!
Oh my God! They killed Kenny! Faster! Like lumber!
Grass tastes bad.
All right, Jack, where do we begin with Playboy?
I only read it for the articles.
I knew that was coming somewhere. Well, it's definitely that book that, I mean, we can't dance around the obvious. We have to at least address why we started reading Playboy back when we were young, impressionable boys, to get our first glimpse.
Before the internet.
Right. But our first glimpse of a naked woman. Mm-hmm. I hate sitting here saying this on air. It's kind of embarrassing, but...
These guys are pigs.
I mean, yeah. And we're not trying to talk in a demeaning way or anything. No. We're just, But I just remember, like, the first time you, like, have one in your hand, like, how, like... bad you felt, like, oh my God, I get so much trouble just for holding this. And here I am holding it.
My friends found one laying outside in the woods when we were kids. I don't know why it was out there.
Man, that is one you do not want to pick up. But when you're young, there's no internet. Gotta make do.
So we tore out the pages and we divvied them all up and had our own special hiding places that any friends that come over, look what I got.
Oh, man. I had friends like that. I never had a stash of Playboys that I showed off to my friends when I was younger, but I knew friends that had them.
I had a friend that had the nasty other two. The dirty other two. But
well, that's a good thing to bring up in the point of talking about what makes Playboy more than just a nudie mag. Like Penthouse and The Hustler. Those are kind of gross books. Yeah. I mean, I can't say I've ever actually sat down and like flipped one open, but I know they're a bit more risque. They're not pulling any punches. I mean, they're just they're
Playboy,
showing it all.
You felt bad. The other ones felt dirty when you looked at them.
I think Playboy showed their women in a much more dignified light.
Yes.
Though, other than just sitting there doing these explicit sexual positions or whatever, but...
tasteful.
More tasteful, yeah. Exactly. So
more of the art route instead of the shock value.
Right. And you joke earlier about the articles, and there really were some good articles in there. You couldn't help but look at them, and funny ones too. I mean, wasn't there like a Dear Playboy kind of thing, like where people would write in and tell their risque stories, or happenings, and so, it's been so long I can't remember. But one thing I do remember was I don't know if they were doing it from the very beginning, but there was a panel in each magazine where they would get a celebrity, and they did like a 20-question panel, and that was always so interesting because it was a more candid like interview feel rather than I guess say kind of interviews we do, like what was it like to do this, or I don't know, not to bash myself there, but
the cartoons were always the best part. Some of the best parts for me.
Those were fun, and we when we talked with Patty a little bit later, we addressed that. But the cartoons, it was different than just picking up your normal newspaper and seeing the comics in there. They had much more work put into them. I guess like they're very Norman Rockwell looking things, very much works of art.
And they're mostly one panel cartoons either.
Yeah, there was one with and I don't remember what it was called, but it was like this little kind of Mutt and Jeff looking guy with a big bulbous nose and a mustache. Bert something, or I don't remember, but those were funny. Those were typically like little three panel strips or something. But other than that, it was like the single family circus style, little comic there.
That or the Far Side kind of.
Right.
They're just one liner that made you crack up.
Now, what about we talked again later with Patty about the image that Playboy had, how'd you word it, the gentleman Playboy image in itself that Playboy helped coin. One thing we should mention is how that's been influential on our pop culture and society. And one thing we were talking about earlier would be kind of like. And I could be wrong about this, but like the Ocean's 11 kind of crew, or like those crooner kind of crews, would that image, well, it would probably exist, but would it be as prominent or as impactful as it is without Playboy behind it?
I don't think so. It'd be more almost like a gangster look. I mean, with a bunch of guys in suits, like the Rat Pack. They're just
right.
You know what I mean? Not like, I don't know, like mob type gangster. A bunch of guys getting together, hooting and hollering. These guys are just mostly going out having fun.
Right. More of a James Bond archetype, what I mean? And I think one thing we didn't talk about with Patty, but I think she says that there's even in one of the Bond movies, he opens his wallet and next to his license to kill is a Playboy club card. Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. One thing that just sprang to mind about Playboy is if you remember, every cover had a kind of like Where's Waldo hidden tiny little bunny head that you had to find.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I had too. But I think what I'm going to do for this episode is hide a little bunny head in our cover art. So that'll be something for our listeners to go find. If you're listening on iTunes, you probably are just seeing our default cover art. But if you either go to Twitter or on our website, you can see I make custom cover arts for each episode. So you'll be able to see the Playboy cover art and find that little bunny. Let us know where it is. What else you got, Jack?
One thing I found out was, since Playboy was like the first of its kind to do that kind of thing, even with like the articles and the pictures, that it paved the way for the Cosmo magazine that kind of started after it. Yep. And that's then after Cosmo started, that's when the nudie of Burt Reynolds centerfold showed up.
Oh, the one Jake has on his wall right now.
Yeah, you know it. Trying to model himself after it every day.
Right. One thing I'm curious about, okay, you mentioned Burt Reynolds being nude, and that makes me wonder. You know, Playboy nowadays, the magazine, has discontinued doing any nudies at all, and is more of what I've heard is more of like a Maxim.
That's
kind of
what
feel,
I take it. Yeah,
which I would be totally down for, because Maxim was is it around still?
I believe it is. FHM was just pretty much the same thing, but that one's not around anymore. I'm pretty sure.
No, that one is gone. Those were great magazines. Thank you for pulling that picture.
There's
up.
Burt Reynolds.
I hated to see that. Yesterday, before when I was doing research for this show, I thought I'm going to try to go out and pick up one of these new Playboys to see what it's become. But I couldn't find one anywhere. You know, it's funny because with the internet now, I think the internet has not only hurt Playboy and other magazine companies, but it's hard to even find a magazine rack like in a gas station or anything anymore.
Yeah, they used to always be back behind with all the cigarettes and stuff, but not so much anymore.
No, you know, I can think of like a handful of gas stations, even like within the past year, it feels that I visited that have all gotten rid of their magazine racks.
Even like pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS, they have like all the gun magazines and all the other magazines, but there was, because they always had them in the plastic bags way up high.
I didn't even think to try a drugstore.
Yeah, I just thought of it just now.
Damn it!
But yeah, I don't even think they have them in there because I can't even think of seeing that I've seen one.
We're lately. A family store that does not promote Playboy. Yeah. Here's a gun magazine. Whatever.
Guns and ammo.
Ridiculous.
Well, we're in Ohio.
I always wanted to go to the Playboy Mansion.
Yes.
And I hope I don't sound skeezy in saying that, because I mean, it's not like, oh, I want to go and just see naked women running around, because I don't think it was even really that.
I don't think it was ever anything. It was, the bunnies were just women that were dressed in
the same kind of
small
bunnies,
clothes with ears and tails.
Right, the same kind of bunnies that were in the clubs and whatnot.
Yeah, it wasn't like a big sex party. It was a place to hang out.
Just a classy place to like play some cards or just hang out, watch a movie. But I've seen some pictures of the inside of this place, and it's incredible. In that underground pool, how is it again? There's a pool above ground outside that has like a mirrored wall in the bottom of it, and there's another pool underground that when you're swimming you can see into the underwater of the above ground pool.
Something like that.
Something to that effect.
So it's like a waterfall, I want to say, that you go into, and that was the tunnel, and then you'd go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's how it worked. The grotto.
I'll have to look that up. That sounds cool. I don't know, but I was looking up pictures online, and I saw this wasn't at the Playboy Mansion, but it must have been one of the big clubs somewhere. It looks like at the top of like a skyscraper, like they have a top floor, and it looks like there's a infinity pool that goes right to the edge. I mean, you're swimming, looking out over the city.
Well, if it's the same one, I want to say it's got a glass floor too, so you're like 6 feet over nothing.
Oh boy, I don't know about all that.
I saw a video of a guy who was he was walking with the camera pointing straight down, and I thought it was fake at first, but no, it's a real deal. No,
I don't think so. I would be the person that got in there. A butterfly would land on it, and it would shatter, and I'd fall to my death. Certainly. But the Playboy Mansion, I believe, doesn't really do that kind of stuff anymore. Well, Hef is, I believe, 91 years old now, and has actually sold the Playboy Mansion. It's sold about within the past 5 to 6 years, I think, for $100 million, and under the stipulation that Hef could live the rest of his life out in that house. And I could be wrong about this, or maybe I just misread it, but I thought I read online that it was bought out by like the Hostess brand, and that they already own like the adjacent property, and that once they acquire the mansion, they're going to return it to its original state.
Turn it into a big cupcake factory.
Right. Join the properties together. I just think it would be no matter who owns it, I think it would be a good idea to turn it into a museum.
Yeah, you would have to do that, something like that, with it being such a big part of history
for so long too. I mean, the clubs and resorts and all that stuff are gone now. We have the magazines still, but just a museum dedicated to the early days of Playboy. I think that would be amazing.
They would have the one wing of the museum would have a curtain where only adults could go into, and it would be full of the centerfolds throughout all the years.
Oh, there you go.
Like the porn part of the video store.
What else you got? Anything else? It's been a long time since we looked at Playboy, so it's hard to sit here and talk in length about it. But we don't need to, because we got to, again, speak with Patty Farmer. And talking with her about her book, Playboy Laughs, The Comedy, Comedians, and Comics of Playboy, was just beyond educational.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome.
It really was. It gives you a new respect for Playboy. There's that misconception out there that all Playboy stands for is smut and naked girls, and that's just not the case. So
I always knew it wasn't the case, but then after talking to her and reading some of the book, finding out even more what happened behind the scenes and stuff,
and how influential it was to stand-up comedy.
That's a huge thing. I had no idea.
And even in her past book, Playboy Swings, one we didn't speak of, she talks about how Playboy helped introduce like jazz music to clubs and stuff. And I'll have to read that one too, because that sounds pretty cool. But I think it's probably better explained from Patty herself. So let's just cut right over to our interview with Patty Farmer. All right, and now joining us on the show today, Patty Farmer, who is here to talk about her book, Playboy Laughs, The Comedy, Comedians, and Cartoons of Playboy. Thanks so much for being with us today, Patty.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. There's nothing better to do than talk about Playboy and chat with your listeners.
I gotta say, this has been very enlightening, reading your book and doing further research. There's so much to Playboy that I was not aware of.
Yes.
Right, and you all are in the business to know, and I'm a historian, and that's how I really got pulled into writing about Playboy. Is a lot of the other greats for other books kept saying, well, I got my start at Playboy, or sitting down with Joan Rivers, she would say, I was at Playboy as part of a trio, and I'd be like, what, a trio, Joan Rivers? And she said, no, Playboy gave me a stage, and, I figured out, how to do stand-up. So I totally agree with you. There's a lot there that we didn't know about.
I think we need to educate our listeners today.
Seriously,
right?
Yeah.
Well, let's start with first the comedy aspect. And in your book, Playboy Laughs, you say that Playboy was a very important part in ushering in stand-up comedy, correct?
Right. I really think they served as almost the bridge between the nightclubs, which were closing down and going out of style, and then the later comedy clubs, the Comedy Club and the Improv. So this was the bridge, and it was unique in the way that nobody else, there was never another nightclub that had so many different clubs in different cities. At the height of their success, they had like 42 clubs around the world, and the comics could go from club to club to club and, perfect their act until they were good enough to move up to the next level. Or there were many comedians that just worked at Playboy for many, many years, and we never heard about them, but they were still an intricate part of the stand-up history.
Now, you had mentioned just a little bit ago you had spoke with Joan Rivers, and I had read that you had said one of the things she said was Playboy was a place to be bad. Also reading, you see that Hef wanted these clubs to be family-friendly as well, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right, so absolutely.
By being bad, she wasn't necessarily like saying curse words or talking filthy material, but more so like stretching her wings or learning the craft, rather.
You're absolutely right, Jeremy. She meant that she could practice in front of a live audience, and she wasn't, terrific in the very beginning. And there are some stories in my books that other people commented on really how she started out and learned her timing, and it's pretty funny. Everybody starts somewhere, and you have to learn, and that was a good place to be bad. You could be, your timing could be off, your punchlines could be off, and you worked at it. You got instant feedback from the audience, and at a Playboy club, they worked you. You did, right. 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 shows a night, depending on the size of the club and the crowd of that day. So you got to really work at your jokes and your punchline, etc.
It's just really amazing to hear, read all the comedians that you say got their start through the Playboy clubs. And again, going back to that misconception, I think a lot of people who weren't aware of the Playboy clubs are probably thinking, well, maybe there's a nude aspect in there. Maybe it's like a strip club or something, but not the case at all. It was a very high-class kind of establishment, right?
Right, absolutely. Hef wanted guys to be able to come in for their 3 martini lunches and do their business deals, and then they wanted them to be able to come back at night and bring their girlfriends and their wives. So there were a lot of comedians that, again, played during their early years, like George Carlin, when he was still very collegiate looking and with a tie and sweater. And he and Hef became good friends, but at some point when he moved up to the 7 words you couldn't say on TV, Hef said, I love you, you're a good friend, I'll come watch your shows, but they're going to be at other clubs. You just can't perform your show in front of my audience anymore. And the same with Lenny Bruce and Richard Pryor and Red Fox, and they all, at one time performed at Playboy. And the funny thing is, even after Hef said, congratulations, you're moving on up, they still came back to the Playboy Club to have dinner and to watch the other comedians because it was the cool, hip place to be.
Right, and one thing I read in your book was a quote from Jerry Pollack, who talks about being promoted to captain, and some other people asking him, how do you get this job? And him saying, the trick is not in getting the job, it's in keeping the job, which would kind of insinuate to a strict environment. But at the same time, the employees had a blast working there, from what I understand. And those aren't two things you typically see next to each other, a strict environment while having a great time.
Absolutely. And Jerry Pollack, he worked, he was a maitre d', and he worked his way up to that position. And he loved working there, and they were very strict. Hef and crew had rules and regulations for absolutely every aspect of running the clubs and, running the magazine and running the TV shows also, but especially the clubs. The bunnies had an actual book of conduct that they had to follow, how to bend, how to serve, how long you could take talking to a customer. And when I first did the research and saw that, I thought, oh my gosh, how regimented. It must have been terrible.
Oh,
but
yeah, for sure.
Don't you think? But talking to the bunnies, they said it was great. They knew exactly what to do. They didn't have to wonder if they were putting a wrong step forward. And they also had protections built in to keep them from uncomfortable positions. And the comedians also, they had a list of, what they could do and what they couldn't do and how they had to appear. They had to wear suits. The guys had to wear suits. The girls had to look nice and, have makeup on and look professional. So they, had a very, very strict set of standards. And there was a room manager that actually graded them and said whether they were funny or not. If they were slipping, they might have to take a few weeks off and not be able to go on the circuit to, the next club in Cincinnati or Des Moines or wherever. So it was, Hef strove for a high-class club in everything that he did, the food, the entertainment, the decorum. So it was mandated.
Man, I would love to have gone to one of those.
And I always thought most comedians started like at the Improv, standing in front of the big brick wall, but instead it was the Playboy clubs.
Isn't that crazy?
And
yeah, would never thought.
It really is. And names like that you would have thought were the Improv days, like Billy Crystal and Steve Martin and Jimmy Walker, David Brenner, they were all at the Playboy Club before the comedy clubs were big. And Jimmy Walker told me, he said we were talking about how strict they were, and he said, it was great, you got a paycheck, where some of the other clubs you got a part of the door, or you passed the hat for tips and you were lucky if the hat came back. But he said a drawback was you had to get up there and wear a suit and tie. And at that time, the David Lettermans and all these folks, they weren't so hot on wearing jackets and ties. So it was a trade-off.
Another thing I was unaware of when starting this research was the fact that there were also Playboy resorts, and I would imagine that have probably held those in the exact same manner in class.
Definitely. He wanted them to be an escape from the cities. One was outside Chicago and outside New York, and he dreamed that people would want to get away from the city for a weekend and drive up to Great Gorge or Lake Geneva and take part of these great resort grounds. There were lakes, you could go fishing, you could go horseback riding. Lake Geneva had its own runway. If you were so inclined, you could take a plane and land on their runway, although mainly that was Hef and his big bunny that used the runway. But, they didn't really catch on that much. I think that was the one thing that Hef didn't really count on not working. He put a ton of money in there and just kept pouring money in. He got big entertainment, people that would not perform for the standard Playboy fees, guys like Shecky Green and Anne Margaret and big names, and they commanded big salaries. The Shecky Greens and Don Rickles and Milton Berles, all these big names would come out, and it still didn't draw the crowd. So it was a financial drain, actually.
And I'd also read that he bought all these properties rather than lease them, which probably worked against the success as well.
Definitely, and it went against the trend of the time. Even the big hotel chains, they were just leasing property and leasing buildings. But Hef liked to have control of everything, and he thought that meant owning it. So that was one of his only poor business decisions.
Right.
A little bit of a learning curve on that one.
Sure.
Yeah, an expensive one.
Yeah.
Out of all the good decisions you make, you're allowed to have a few in there, right?
I guess.
Don't hit, I guess. Now, Patty, in writing this book and the book that came before it, Playboy Swings, you've talked to so many people and done some crazy amounts of research. I'm just kind of curious, and the people you've spoke with, like David Brenner, Tony Bennett, Jerry Van Dyke, Joan Rivers, and the list goes on. Do you have any stories or moments that stand out with any of these people?
Oh, my gosh. It was hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of people that I sat down and talked to. And, they were all amazing. But I think a lot of the ladies were the most interesting to me because we didn't have a lot of them. Of course, Phyllis had gone by the time I wrote the book, but I did a lot of research on Phyllis Diller. So I found her career amazing and her interaction with Playboy. And, of course, Joan Rivers, Lily Tomlin, Kay Ballard, Toady Fields, all these groundbreaking women comics, stand-up comedians. I thought they were, just different and very unusual. And just that the big names not only got their start there, but they kept coming back. Not only the comedians, but people like you mentioned, like Tony Bennett. He played there at the height of his career. Nat King Cole appeared on the TV shows at the height of his career. All the great comedians, the sick comedians like Mort Saul and Lenny Bruce, they were all there. But there was a mystique and a gravitating pull about Playboy that made people come back and even work the clubs for the $400 a week they were getting, which is what Tony Bennett did. A lot of them over and over and over again. It was really eye-opening and amazing to me.
I can't imagine all the greats you've spoke with and the stories they put together. So when you say that the women really stand out and they're just unique and different, was their perspective on Playboy, though positive, somehow varying from what the gentlemen were saying?
No, it pretty much mirrored it, but I think they had a harder time because it was a road not traveled. They didn't have any blueprints. I think, Phyllis Diller was probably the first woman stand-up with the audience and the showmanship that people followed. Joan Rivers followed her, and all these other people just, they were winging it. Where, there have always been comedians, stand-up comedians, more or less, and the guys had their own network. They'd hang out together, whether it was New York or L.A., and, the Rodney Dangerfields and Jackie Gales. They'd have lunch and they'd have breakfast and they'd hang out together. But the girls, they didn't have that network because nobody had really come before them.
You had mentioned Nat King Cole earlier being on the Playboy television show, and I'd heard you say that what a big deal that was and that it drove the networks and the sponsors crazy, and how Hef doesn't really get credited for really working against racial barriers.
Absolutely.
That were in place.
He's been given credit by a lot of our black performers for helping them break the color barriers. Dick Gregory, Nat King Cole. You mentioned Nat King Cole being on his TV show, and you have to remember it was 1959, and we look back on it and we say, what was the big deal? Well, the big deal was Nat King Cole was on a national TV show. He came out, he talked to Hugh Hefner. He did not perform, and he went and sat on a couch with a white woman who had come out with a book, Rona Jaffe, and they talked about literature. And the next day, the world at Playboy exploded, with the sponsors threatening to pull advertising, networks threatening to pull the show, because we were working in segregated America. It was 1954. Civil rights didn't come into effect until 64, and that's mind-blowing to me. I mean, with the comedians, Dick Gregory, the same thing. He got hired at the Playboy Club, and his first job there was in front of an all-white audience. And not only that, it was an all-white audience of meat packers or meat manufacturers from Alabama. So he had his work cut out for him.
Tough crowd.
Yeah.
It was precedent setting, because they would not let him off the stage. In the very beginning, when he walked out, they were shocked, and they even commented. They said, we're here from Alabama, almost like, why are you here and when's the white guy coming out? And Dick just went with it. He made a joke out of it. And if you know Dick Gregory's humor, he's funnier than heck. And a little, he can throw it back with the best of them. And at one point, after about 2 hours, Victor Lounce went over to the mansion where Hef was hanging out and said, you have to get in the car and go over to the club because you have to see this. And he was still on stage when they came back. And I'm sure you guys are well aware that, give a comedian an audience and he'll never leave the stage. And these guys just, they wanted to hear more. They were rolling in the aisles. But Dick Gregory got his star on the Walk of Fame a few years ago, and one of the first things he said was, I credit Hugh Hefner for helping to break the color barrier and giving me the chance to be here today. And even I've told that story many times, and I still get chills thinking about somebody helping to break the color barrier, that it was so unusual for a black man to be in front of a white audience. But Hef did it over and over again on his TV shows, with the Jazz Festival for sure. He integrated the audience and the stage, and it just hadn't been done before. And I know I'm getting long-winded, but I think Hef did it he was just colorblind, and you've heard that expression, but it's true. He was one of the colorblind people. He never said, well, we'll make this big statement and it'll be great publicity. No, he was always shocked when there was blowback, because, like Dick Gregory told me, Hef only really cared if you could sing, dance, or, blow a tune, and he hired the best person. He never looked at whether you were a man or a woman or black or white. And it was very, very humbling to meet Hef and realize how much he contributed to helping break the color barriers.
It was all about the show.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's crazy to think that it really wasn't all that long ago.
Yeah, really.
That's how the world was, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And people like Hef doing what he did, getting us to where we are today. We've come so far.
We have. And we live in crazy times right now. It seems like, are we going backwards, forwards, sideways? I don't know. So it's refreshing when you see somebody like Hugh Hefner that just believed in the First Amendment. He's a very simple man. Hef is a certifiable genius, but he has his beliefs. He knows what he believes in, and it doesn't waver. He believes in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and, pretty girls, and that's pretty much it, and a good show.
Now, another thing I want to touch on are the cartoons. Growing up, I'm going to sit here and say we both have looked at Playboys, right?
Yep.
Part of becoming a man, I think.
You boys surprised me.
But, one common thing or a common joke around the Playboy magazine is, I read for the articles.
Yeah,
but,
always.
When I was looking at those, I did look through the articles, and I did look at the cartoons. Many of them. So very funny and very memorable at that. I mean, the artwork was, some of it was just that, like really good art. And in reading your book, I come to find out that like Leroy Neiman and like Shel Silverstein were doing cartoons for Playboy.
Absolutely. And, today Leroy's work hangs in museums around the world, but back in the late 50s and 60s, as long as he could, he drew cartoons for Playboy and hung out at the offices and looked at pretty girls and was one of the cartoonists. And a lot of the other greats, like Jack Cole from Plastic Man and Arnie Roth and Al Jaffe, all the Mad Men magazine crew, but they were Mad Men too. That was Hef's genius. He got the very best people for the magazine, whether it was cartoonists or whatever. And then I'm sure you guys know he was just a micromanager. So it was a very funny process, You'd have some great guy, like whether it was an illustrator or a cartoonist, take Vargas, Roberta Vargas and the Vargas girls. He'd get an assignment and he'd draw the girl. He'd put it in an envelope from L.A., send it to Chicago. Hef would look at it, and he'd draw his little editing notes, and he was very particular. Her eyes should be a millimeter closer. Her, breast should be tilted up and not down. And then he'd put it back in an envelope and send it to Vargas out in L.A., and it would go on every single month to get this magazine out. Very funny. And Al Roth, again, a great cartoonist, one of the greats. He told some funny stories in Playboy Laughs about the whole process. It was a lot of work, but it sounds like those boys had a lot of fun, too.
The attention to detail is just what astounded me more than anything. Yeah, okay, to pick the artist to do cartoons for my magazine, but to then oversee it down to the last detail. In your book here, you have one of the letters that Hugh wrote, and just at the very end where he says it should have a very Norman Rockwell feel. When I read that, it like something in me stirred because I remember cartoons with that look, and even thinking that. It just seeing it come full circle was incredible. Now, and you also said that before the days of Playboy, Hef had actually aspired in being a comic artist.
Right. And how the world would have been different. Hef grew up wanting to make his living as a cartoonist, where a lot of people in those days, that's how they made their living. And he drew, he submitted to magazines, and unsuccessfully for the most part. And at one point, 1951, he came out, somebody produced a full 74-page comic book of his work, and it went nowhere. He was good, but just not good enough to compete with the other guys of those days. And that's when he turned his focus towards putting out a beautiful men's magazine and building a Playboy empire. How nice He had that choice. Gee, I can't be a cartoonist. I guess I'll create an empire.
Exactly. Now it's funny because I got online and the book that was published of his early works, was it That Toddlin' Town, I believe?
Right. I mean, it's like some ridiculously long title. That Toddlin' Town, Rowdy Burlesque of Chicago, Manners and Mores.
Right. One, I think I'm going to have to find myself a copy of this just to have on the shelf in the studio here. But two, when looking at the artwork in it, a lot of it was comparable to what I had seen in Playboy magazine. So did he not only outsource some of these great artists, but was he putting his own work in the book at the same time?
Very observant of you, Jeremy. Absolutely, he was. He did some of his own cartoons for the magazine. Definitely.
That's incredible. That's very cool. Now, I just have to ask, because you just mentioned, and I've seen pictures, that you have got to meet Hugh Hefner. What can you say about him? What's it like to meet him in person? What's he like?
It's amazing because I know the history. I'm a historian and a researcher, so I know that he's a genius, that he not only created this great magazine, but he did all these innovative business practices before anyone else. Before President Trump ever slapped his name on a building, there was Playboy branding, so branded. He franchised. He perfected cross-marketing. And I knew all of these things. And then to sit down with him and talk to him, whether it's about jazz or stand-up, and to be invited to his home to kick back with a bunch of friends and watch a movie. I just felt so honored to sit there and be with Hugh Hefner. He was a pioneer in so many ways, and when I talk around the country and around the world, the first thing I say is, what do you think of when you hear the word Playboy? And of course people shout out, bunnies and centerfolds, but there is so much more. And he changed our culture.
There really is so much more, and there's more in this book for me to read. I can't wait. August 3rd, it's coming out, everybody. Playboy Laughs, the comedy, comedians, and cartoons of Playboy. And I'm sure it's going to be available on your website, patty-farmer.com. Is there anywhere else that people can get this book?
Absolutely. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere books are sold. And if you walk into a bookstore and it's not there, ask them why.
A very good question indeed. Now, this book is the second, which is in a trilogy, a Playboy book trilogy. And the next one is going to be Playboy Thinks. What are you going to be encompassing in that book?
The actual writing. Once again, Hefner's genius comes through. He hired the very best authors like Ian Fleming. He wrote 7 short stories for Playboy before they were picked up by the movies and made into On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Diamonds Are Forever, etc. People like Alex Haley before he wrote Roots. He had writers of that caliber. The interviews, the editors, the actual writers and thinkers.
That'll be cool. You'll have to let us know when that's going to happen. We'll get you back on the show and talk about that one as well.
Absolutely.
Just one more question for you, Patty.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about Playboy that makes you want to do all this research and write these books? Why Playboy?
It's the decades of entertainment, and for some reason, no one else has done it. There are books going back decades about the mansion, Hugh Hefner's lifestyle, the clubs, not the clubs, but all these books about, the girls next door and this and that, even books about the golf tournaments, but nothing about the great entertainers and great entertainment that the Empire, the Playboy organization helped launch and helped keep alive, keep the comedy alive.
That's
Bill
awesome.
Marx wrote the foreword for my book, and he said his father would have loved to have played there. If he was around, his father and his uncles, the Marx brothers, would definitely have been there.
Oh, man, I wish we could have gone. Yeah, how cool it would have been. Well, Patty, once again, I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk with us.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for helping me get the word out, and I'm sorry if I talk too much, but there's so much to say about Playboy, and I love it.
We can listen to you all day.
Oh, you guys are the best. Thank you.
All right, everyone, and there you have it, our interview with author Patty Farmer and about her book, Playboy Laughs, the comedy, comedians, and cartoons of Playboy. I want to thank Patty's publicist for sending us an advanced copy of the book to check out and read. It was really cool, and I can't wait to read further. But if you want to grab a copy for yourself, you can go to patty-farmer.com. I'm sure she's going to have it for sale on there, and we're going to have a link on our website, cannedairpodcast.com, where you'll be able to follow and purchase the book. I'm sure it'll be like on Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I think I saw pre-order options for. So, and probably even in your local bookstore. So lots of different places to check out Patty. Again, go to patty-farmer.com to find out more about Playboy Laughs and Patty's other books. And you can find Patty on Twitter at patty@theplaza. We've learned so much doing this episode. It's crazy. I had no idea about 3/4 of all this stuff.
Yeah.
So this has just been a treat. I want to thank Patty again. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So, Jack, what do we have on the website?
Go to cannedairpodcast.com where you can check out our special guests, listen to the show, follow us on all our social media, visit the Hall of Heroes, see the Wall of Justice, check out our YouTube page. Click on that merch button and buy some shirts and cups and pillows and iPhone cases now. And if you have any comment, complaint, or want to give us a pat on the back, send us an email on our contacts page.
And again, don't forget to find us on Twitter at CannedAirPod and on Instagram at @canned_air and on our YouTube page. Lots of videos to watch on there. Again, to our listeners going to the Wizard World conventions, we have Columbus, August 4th, 5th, and 6th. Chicago, August 24th through the 27th. And Nashville, September 8th through the 10th. If you're going to be buying tickets, go to wizardworld.com and at checkout in the promo box, type Canned Air. No caps, no spaces, just Canned Air, and you're going to get that cool Canned Air bump, 10% off. And head to society6.com/CannedAirPod, or just go to our website and click the merch button to get some tasty Canned Air merch. We got mugs, we got t-shirts, we got phone cases, we got shower curtains. We got everything your little heart could desire. So head over that way and show your love. Is that it?
That's it for this show.
All right. So until next time, I'm Jeremy Colley.
And I'm Jack Doherty.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Is on fire. I need to get help.
Do it from outside.
Blowtorch.
Whenever there's a fire in your house, be sure to get outside immediately. And once outside, get on CannedAirPodcast.com.
Well, thanks for the tip, Blowtorch, but just one question. What about the fire?
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!